Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I hope you are well. So, I want to continue with our investigation or exploration of the life of the scholar that we're hoping to go on a journey with, and that is none other than Shah Wali Allah Dehlavi. So, let's go through some interesting experiences and passages from his life. So, the first one is I want to talk about someone called Qutbuddin al-Bakhtiyar al-Kaki, very famous. And the story is, and Shah Wali Allah records this story, that there was an incident that happened which happened with his father. Remember, his father was called Sheikh Abdul Rahim. Sheikh Abdul Rahim was the name of the father of Shah Wali Allah. And his father says that I once visited the resting place, the maqam of Qutbuddin al-Bakhtiyar al-Kaki. He's the name here. He said, I visited the tomb, and the sheikh who was buried actually spoke, or he addressed him, if you like, and he told him, Shah Wali Allah's father, that he's going to have a son, and that he should call his son Qutbuddin. In other words, he should call Shah Wali Allah Qutbuddin. But what happened was, Allah caused Shah Wali Allah's father, Sheikh Abdul Rahim, to forget. And so instead he was called Shah Wali Allah. And Wali Allah is a very important name, a friend of God or someone who's very close to God. And Wali Allah means friend of Allah, but it also shows, it also signifies. This is why giving good names to your children is very, very important, because it signifies things. But it also signifies, if you like, this idea that he's always going to be connected to God. Like his son's going to be very special to Allah, connected to Allah. Okay, Wali Allah. Because if you're a friend of someone, then that would mean that you're going to be very, very close to them. Now, Abdul Rahim, Sheikh Abdul Rahim, Shah Wali's father, was somewhat confused about having a son. And the reason was that his wife had reached their menopause. In other words, it was an age where she's not going to have children. But Allah blessed her. Just in the story of Abraham, he was blessed with a son even at an old age. And how would he have this? Like, how would he have a son with a wife who's very, very old? So Shah Abdul Rahim went to someone very, very famous, Sheikh Muhammad of Pulat, who was a friend of his, and he told him to marry another woman. Her name was Fakhrun Nisa. Beautiful name. Fakhr of Nisa, like, the pride of women. So Shah Wali Allah was encouraged to marry Fakhrun Nisa, who was actually the daughter of his disciple. So you'll find this, that many disciples would gift their daughters in marriage to their beloved. And so they got married. And then Shah Wali Allah's son, Shah Abdul Aziz, mentions that the Shah Wali Allah was born in Pulat as well. Okay, 1703. That's when Shah Wali Allah was born. Now, Shah Wali Allah also claims to be the descendant of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the second Caliph of Islam, Amirul Mu'mineen. And so he also mentions that once when he was doing muraqabah, this is like a form of a meditation, if you like. Us moderns find all of this stuff really, really bizarre because we live in a very scientific world. But muraqabah is this way of like suspending the self, where you are connecting yourself to another world. And so he says that he was shown a vision, Shah Wali Allah, where his lineage went all the way back to the Caliph Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, Shah Wali Allah's family migrated to India, or Hindustan if you like, in the 13th century. There's a reason we should call it Hindustan, and maybe if you message me, I will tell you why. It's not called India. We call it India now, but if we're talking about India before the British came along, we would call it Hindustan. In any case, his ancestors migrated to India in the 13th century. So he has, his origin is Arab, Shah Wali Allah's. Okay. Now, his father, Sheikh Abdul Rahim, Shah Abdul Rahim, if you like, he was also someone who was very close or his family had close affinities with the Delhi Sultanate. In other words, they were very close to political power as well. Okay, that was his family. And they also joined later on the Mughals, who were obviously the people who the empire that was running or in charge of the Muslim affairs in Hindustan. So his father, Sheikh Abdul Rahim Shah Abdul Rahim, he didn't really want to be connected to power. This is something that's seen as negative by some Sufi ulama, not all, and some mystics find that it's not a good thing for the ulama or for pious people to be too close to power. But at the same time, they should be advising power. And we'll see that when we come to Shah Wali Allah, how he advised the political leaders. But Shah Abdul Rahim didn't want to come too close to power. The Emperor Aurangzeb wanted him to work on a few projects to translate and write books on fatwa and fiqh as well. And there was a Darul Ulum, or there was a semi named after him, because Shah Abdul Rahim was a scholar in his own right, and it was called Madrasa Rahimiyya, so named after him. And it was shifted to the center of Delhi, not far from the Jami' Mosque as well. However, sadly in 1857, that mosque or that madrasa or that seminary was reduced to ruins, and you can't really, there's nothing there now. Okay. One of the things that was really important about them was their approach to the Quran. The Waliullah family really encouraged people to read the Quran or to engage with the Quran without any commentary. And so students were encouraged to think over the word of Allah, the Kalamullah, independently. You just read the Quran and try and make sense of it yourself as well. And this is one of the reasons why in his training, in his pedagogy, Shah Wali Allah used to teach the Quran before Hadith. Okay, before Hadith. That was his pedagogy. That was his way of teaching as well. Now, I want to share something very, very useful with you, inshallah, which is a particular formula for contentment and independence. A lot of people struggle in the modern world with finding contentment and independence. So I want to share a particular useful suggestion that Shah Waliullah found from his father. And he says that his father used to say, or he used to advise him to say, Ya Mughni. Ya Mughni. Mughni literally means the one who satisfies, okay, who satisfies the needs of his servants. And he said that my father used to say to me, you should recite this 1,100 times every day, and in Surah Muzammil as well, 40 times. Okay, and this formula will help you in acquiring contentment and independence. So Ya Mughni, Ya Mughni, Ya Mughni, every day 1,100 times, and Surah Muzammil 40 times. So if you can do that, that will be very, very useful. I want to end with something very, very fascinating. I want to end with this story, inshaAllah ta'ala. And this story is very, very useful. This is a story of Shah Waliullah's mother. Now, we don't really have many stories of Shah Waliullah performing miracles or engaging in miracles, but we do have one incident Shah Waliullah mentions from his mother when he'd just been weaned. And he says that she saw a dream, and in that dream, she saw a wonderful shape, a bird in a wonderful shape. And the bird came to his father, Shah Abdul Rahim, with a sheet of paper in its bill. That sheet of paper is just Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I've just abbreviated here. It had Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm trying to draw a bird here without drawing the image. So that's like a bird with a red beak there. And it had a name of Allah written in gold letters. Then another bird came, and this bird had a bill in its mouth, and it was written Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. If prophethood after Muhammad were possible, we would make him a prophet. I would make Shah Waliullah a prophet. With Muhammad, however, prophethood has come to an end. So these two birds came to Shah Waliullah's father, and his mother saw this vision, or she saw this dream. And she also describes the bird. The first bird had a red bill, like you can see here, and the remainder of his body was dust color like a pigeon, and the remaining part of the other bird was green like a parrot, green like a parrot. So I've just drawn that out for you without drawing the image for you. Now, what does all of this mean? Well, the first sheet of paper, this one here, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, points, he says, to the very perfection of my father, right? He was a man of fana. What does fana mean? He was a man who was completely in love with Allah. He immersed himself in Allah. And the color, the dust color on the bird signifies that he wasn't really into what's called metaphysical speculations. For one of a better phrase, he wasn't really into getting into deep intricacies of philosophy, debating about God, thinking about God. He just practiced the science. He wasn't writing about it as such. He wasn't a philosopher as such as well. And so this kind of signifies who my father was. So they have pleasant voices, but they don't have eloquence. In other words, they are in love with God. They are colored by the love of God, but because they haven't engaged in intellectual, sophisticated conversations or reflections on God, they don't have quite the eloquence. So it's important to obviously practice and have Sufism and Tasawwuf in you, but it's also important to have a spiritual, philosophical, theological understanding of your relationship with God. And then he says the other one was reflection of me, because he said, Shah Wali Allah, this one here, that I am endowed with the capacity to analyze the excellence of the prophets, right? Actually, prophets. In other words, Shah Wali Allah was given the ability to understand what the Prophet ﷺ was trying to say. And the color green on this bird was a parrot, he says, and because he was given eloquence. He was given eloquence. He could talk like just like a how parrot just talks, like just is able to chatter away. So he had Shah Wali not only had mystical experiences, but he was also someone very deeply learned as well. So we learn something very, very important here. Is knowledge is important, but spiritual experience is very, very important because we are spiritual beings as well. And so his father was what we say a person who has sainthood, not quite the knowledge that Shah Wali Allah had, but Shah Wali Allah had sainthood and he also had knowledge. Okay, and so he in many ways excelled above his father. So it's an important lesson for us that sometimes the student will excel even their teacher in certain respects. And this has happened historically. Many examples you'll find of ulama who have excelled even their teachers, surpassed even their teachers. So I hope you found that useful. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.